God from Satan study. Today we are going to start from chapter 9, verse 75, God willing. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. Some of them even pledged, if God showered us with His grace, we would be charitable and would lead a righteous life. But when He did shower them with His provisions, they became stingy and turned away in aversion. Consequently, He plagued them with hypocrisy in their hearts. Sorry. Is there something? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, mashallah, brother.
Oh,
Yes.
I got a message where it says microphone, but okay. Consequently, He plagued them with hypocrisy in their hearts, till the day they meet Him. This is because they broke their promise to God and because of their lying. Do they not realize that God knows their secrets and their conspiracies, and that God is the knower of all secrets? Those who criticize the generous believers for giving too much and ridicule the poor believers for giving too little, God despises them. They have incurred a painful retribution. So God tells throughout the whole Quran to us that we should give from all the provisions that God given us. And we learn, for example, in the first chapters and the first verses of the Quran, God tells that the believers are the ones who gave from the provisions that God has given them. So it's very important to not be stingy. And we learn, of course, from the Quran that we need to give charity. The charity is 2.5% from our earnings, the money that we get. We need to give at least 2.5% of that. Besides that, we also need to give the charity to the poor and, like, for example, to help people who are in need. And as believers, we should trust in God that when we give, God promises us that He will give at least the same amount, like 2 times the same amount back. That is God's promise. And He also says that He will give more, of course. And God knows best. And we learn here that being stingy is very bad. Sorry. And it's a character of those who are not really believing, because they say that if God gives us something, that we will give it, but then God gives them and they don't give to the poor, and they ridicule the people who have less money, for example, and they give less, and they ridicule them. So actually, it doesn't matter how much you give. It's the intentions that actually count. So you have also people who give a lot of money, but they do it for show off. They don't really do for because God tells them to do that, and that doesn't count. Satan's most effective bait: the myth of intercession. 80. Whether you ask forgiveness for them or do not ask forgiveness for them, even if you ask forgiveness for them 70 times, God will not forgive them. This is because they disbelieve in God and His messenger. God does not guide the wicked people. And the footnote says, if Muhammad could not intercede on behalf of his own uncles and cousins, what makes strangers who never met him think that he will intercede on their behalf? Abraham could not intercede on behalf of his father, nor could Noah intercede on behalf of his son. Chapter 11, 46, and chapter 60, verse 4. So we can clearly see that a lot of people around us, they believe in intercession. And we learn from the Quran, this is a bait that the devil is using, to believe that other than God can help you actually. And like the Christians, they believe that Jesus is going to save them. The so-called Sunnis, they believe that Muhammad is going to save them. And you have the Shiites, they believe that the family of the Prophet is going to save them. You have also people that believe that, like for example, the Imam in the mosque is going to save them, or there are a lot of places where people they make this a way of a living. You know, they have a lot of followers, and these people they follow them because they think that they are going to save them from hellfire. But we learn from the Quran that this is impossible. Like, only God can help anyone at all. So, and it seems to all these people that this Quran verse doesn't exist. Like, they believe that someone else can intercede while actually knowing that this verse exists in the Quran. And this actually shows us that reading the Quran doesn't mean that you understand the Quran and you really get the message from what God tells us in the Quran. So, and of course, God says in the Quran in Surah Rahman that God is the teacher of the Quran. So, knowing Arabic or reading the Quran doesn't necessarily mean that you would understand it. For be able to understand the Quran, you need to be sincere and ask God for help to understand the verses that He has sent. 81. The sedentary rejoiced in their staying behind the messenger of God and hated to strive with their money and their lives in the cause of God. They said, "Let us not mobilize in this heat. Say, the fire of hell is much hotter. If they could only could only comprehend. Let them laugh a little and cry a lot. This is the requital for the sins they have earned. If God returns you to a situation where they ask your permission to mobilize with you, you shall say, you will never again mobilize with me, nor will you ever fight with me against any enemy. For you have chosen to be with the sedentary in the first place. Therefore you must stay with the sedentary. You shall not observe the funeral prayer for any of them when he dies, nor shall you stand at his grave. They have disbelieved in God and his messenger and died in a state of wickedness." So this is also an important command from God, that we can't just go to the funerals, right? So I remember that when you go to a funeral, they, like for example, read the Quran to them, while God says in, if I'm not mistaken, Surah Yasin, that this book is for the living beings. It's not for the dead. And it's very interesting to see those people reading the Quran for dead people. And that shows also a lack of knowledge about the Quran. You know, and they read actually the same verse where God says that this book is for the living being and not for the dead. And they are reading that verse to when someone dies. So we can see that they also think that reading the Quran to the dead people, that it's going to help the dead people. But we learn from the Quran that when you are dead, there is no way going back. That you had your time in this world, and after dying, no one can help you other than God. And you had your time to investigate and to learn and to look at the message that God has sent you. And if you were if you were the first ones of rejecting it, and this is something that I see a lot within the people who whom around me, with whom I told and given the message, they are very quick with not accepting the message. It's very easy for them to not accept it. So they are not very careful with their decisions. They just follow their parents or the people around them, and follow the ones who are the numbers are high. Worldly materials are nil. Do not be impressed by their money or their children. God causes these to be sources of misery for them in this world, and their souls depart as disbelievers. Do not be impressed by their money or their children. So a lot of people are actually being impressed by other people's money and their power. And because they have this money and power, they try to be with them. But God tells us not to be impressed by their money. And of course, we know that all power belongs to God only. This is like very important for us to know, because this helps us by making decisions in our worldly lives. So when we want to make a decision based on other people, if we know that God is the only one who is in power and God controls everything, then based on that we can make our own decisions. And so we can't we don't think that, for example, if you work in a company and your boss can make some decisions, if you think that he's making the decisions, then maybe your behavior towards your boss and your behavior towards your job is going to change. But if you believe that God is in power and he controls everything, then you're going to behave differently. You will know that everything that happens is controlled by God. And this will make you happy, actually, like putting your trust in God and knowing that he is in control, and you knowing that and trying to be as close as possible to God will eventually make you happy. And the other way is that when people think that their boss or someone else has the power, they become like slaves to them. They try their best to impress them and do maybe more and work for them and make their decisions based on that belief that they have some kind of a power. It's also for those people who these people like the sheikhs, the ones like the clergymen that they think they are. So they believe that they will help them and bring them to heaven and save them from hell. So they became their slaves. Instead of worshiping God and doing the things that God has commanded, they are doing and working for those people. And eventually, in the end, they will see, of course, when they die, what the real truth is, and they will be extremely regretful. True believers are eager to strive. As for the messenger and those who believed with him, they eagerly strive with their money and their lives. These have deserved all the good things. They are the winners. God has prepared for them gardens with flowing streams wherein they abide forever. This is the greatest triumph. So when you know the real, when you know who God really is, and you know that he controls everything and he is the only one who has power, you are going to live accordingly. And here God says, as for the messenger and those who believed in him, they eagerly strive with their money and their lives. So we need to strive with our money and also with our lives when that's necessary. And God promises that when you do that, you will deserve the gardens with flowing streams, and it will be forever. It's not something that is going to end. That's also really amazing, right? God could have made the hereafter like not eternal, but something that is like for a few thousand years, for example. But he didn't. He made it forever. That's also it's really amazing to know that when you die and you make it to heaven, then it's going to be forever. It's never going to end. And to understand what that really means, maybe it's very difficult for us to even understand it. Like, how can we imagine a hereafter which never ends? Like, because we are in such a state in this worldly life that we always know that there is going to be an end, right? Even the people who don't believe in God, they know that one day death will come, and they will die. We all will die one day. Even if you believe in God or you don't, death is like a fact in this world. So we don't really know what forever means, maybe. But knowing that God tells us that there is a place that will stand forever, and if you follow what God says and you have this chance to go there, like the best thing to do is to work for it. To believe in God and to believe in what he has sent with the proofs, of course. 90. The Arabs made up excuses and came to you seeking permission to stay behind. This is indicative of their rejection of God and His messenger. They stay behind. Indeed, those who disbelieve among them have incurred a painful retribution. So, if I'm not mistaken, this is about a war that's going to happen, and you had some of the Arabs, they made excuses, and if I remember it correctly, they said like, we have our children, we have our wives, let's stay there. Maybe the enemy will come there, and then we'll protect it from there. So they made some excuses not to go and not to fight in that war. And God says that they stayed behind. And in that group, you had also people like who didn't want to go to the war, and they didn't want the submitters to win the war. And if they lost the war, they would have gone with the other party and would tell them, "Listen, we were with you. Actually, we didn't really want to be with them." Not to be blamed are those who are weak or ill or do not find anything to offer, so long as they remain devoted to God and His messenger. The righteous among them shall not be blamed. God is forgiver, most merciful. So, of course, in that group of people who stayed behind, you had also the weak people, like the ill, or the ones who didn't had anything to offer, And God tells them, don't worry about it. God knows what the true intentions of those people are. And it's very important that they remain devoted to God and His messenger, God says. So He doesn't, the thing that reminds me here is that God, He doesn't forget anything, right? He knows everything, and He knows the intentions of everyone, and He tells us this in the Quran. So we can see that the Quran is extremely detailed. God is telling us, it's telling what happened at that time, and then He also gives us the small details of things that were happened, and that God gave them this space where if you are ill and you can't go and fight, it's all okay as long as you devote yourself to God and the messenger. No, 92. Also excused are those who come to you wishing to be included with you, but you tell them, I do not have anything to carry you on. So also excused are those who come to you wishing to be included with you, but you tell them, I do not have anything to carry you on. They then turn back with tears in their eyes, genuinely saddened that they could not afford to contribute. So also a good example that you have, so the some people that they want to come, but they don't have, like, for example, maybe they didn't have horses, or they didn't have anything to to go on and to help the people, but then they are pardoned, and they were really sad, like they were crying because they couldn't come. So this shows that they were really devoted, they really wanted to come, but they couldn't. And it's okay if these kind of things happen. It's important that the intentions are the important thing. So you have people who don't want to come. They have maybe the things to be able to come, but they make up some excuses. And then on the other part, you have people who really want to come, but they can't because they don't have it. But they are excused, of course, also by God. The blame is on those who ask your permission to stay behind, even though they have no excuse. They have chosen to be with the sedentary. Consequently, God has sealed their hearts, and thus they do not attain any knowledge. Yeah, and here we can see clearly that that which is wrong is when you can come, don't make any excuses. When it's time to go and to fight in the cause of God, because someone is attacking you, for example, we shouldn't have any excuses. We need to fight. We need to give our wealth, of course, like money or anything that we have, but also we need to be prepared to give our lives in the cause of God. And we shouldn't make any excuses like the people and the Arabs at that time have done. They apologize to you. The title is Hard Times Serve to Expose the Hypocrites. 94. They apologize to you when you return to them from battle. Say, do not apologize. We no longer trust you. God has informed us about you. God will see your works, and so will the messenger. Then you will be returned to the knower of all secrets and declarations. Then he will inform you of everything you had done. So this also shows that these people who stayed behind, while they could have come to the war, they don't believe in God. So, and this shows their real faces. These are hypocrites. They tell the believers that they are believers as well, but they make excuses and they don't come. Um, and this shows, of course, and they apologize after the war is finished. You know, they see that the submitters, they have won the war, they came back, and then they apologize for it. Instead of, they could also say, you know, we are not believers, but we don't want to go to the war, we are not with you. But instead they say that they are believers and make excuses. So, and God tells us that in hard times you can clearly see who are the hypocrites. So, you know, we learn from the Quran, of course, that God says that He will test us, right? With money, with children, with a lot of things. God is going to test us. And when you have these hard times, those are the times when God is, you know, showing who the real hypocrites are, because they then can't go further, right? They can lie about that they are being believers, but when it's really serious and they really need to put their lives into it, then they step back. You know, it can also be with money, for example. They can say that they are believers, but when it's time to really give a good amount of money, or like a huge of a amount of money to, you know, to help the submitters or to do a good deed, then you will see that they will step back and they won't do it. So then they will be exposed, of course. 95. They will swear by God to you when you return to them that you may disregard them. Do disregard them. They are polluted, and their destiny is hell as a requital for the sins they have earned. They swear to you that you may pardon them. Even if you pardon them, God does not pardon such wicked people. So, you know, they keep being hypocrites. Like after the war, it happened, and then they came back, like the submitters who fought the war, they came back and they told them that they are not going to believe in them anymore, and they are not trusting them anymore. And but those people, they are in the same area, they live in the same area, and they are exposed. So what do? They start swearing by God to you. They give the name of God and they are swearing, so then they can be that the messenger could disregard them. But God says, even if you do that, I will not pardon them. And God will not pardon such wicked people. And we know from the Quran that, you know, the lowest pit of hell is like the hypocrites are going to go to the lowest pit of hell. So it doesn't matter if the messenger is going to pardon them. God is telling us He is not going to do that. So it's like this shows us how dangerous it is, right? To you know, you say that you are a believer, but actually you are not. Like, you could also choose to say, like, okay guys, you have your own belief, I have my own, and I don't want to interfere in your wars. Like, I don't want to be with you guys. Like, leave me alone and I will live besides you. I won't harm you. For you, your belief, and for me, my belief. But they are not doing that. They tell that they are believers while they are not. And this is very, very dangerous. 97. The Arabs. The Arabs are the worst in disbelief and hypocrisy, and the most likely to ignore the laws that God has revealed to His messenger. God is omniscient, most wise. So I remember from like the other translations of the Quran that you know, almost in all of them, in all the translations, they don't use the word Arab. They use something else, like the people of the desert, if I'm not mistaken. Like they in Arabic it says Arabs in the Quran, in the original Arabic Quran, it says Arabs, but when they do the translation, they don't use the word Arab. They say it's like the desert people. So this also shows that, you know, it shows their hypocrisy. Like why are you doing that? Why are you changing that word? If God says Arabs, then they are Arabs. And we know from the Messenger of the Covenant that he says that there will be no Arab believers. So, and he like also in the same group that they were in, he were telling the people at the moment, like, are there any Arabs here? No, because they are not going to believe. And the reason is because, God made it so, and God tells us that the Arabs are the worst in disbelief and hypocrisy. So when you are born in a Arab family and you make it until you're 40 and you don't die, that means that like it's also that means that you are not going to heaven, you are not going to believe. This is what we learn from the messenger, and this we can clearly say, and he says that too. And if you die before the age of 40, of course you're going to go to heaven. But if not, you are not going to be one of the believers. 98. Some Arabs consider their spending in the cause of God to be a loss, and even wait in anticipation that the disaster may hit you. It is they who will incur the worst disaster. God is here omniscient. Well, amazing that they really don't want to spend in the cause of God, and they are like waiting that the disaster may hit you so that they don't spend or they just can change the things. Amazing. 99. Other Arabs do believe in God and the last day and consider their spending to be a means towards God and a means of supporting the messenger. Indeed, it will bring them nearer. God will admit them into his mercy. God is forgiver, most merciful. So you have, of course, at the time, Arabs who were true believers, and they were spending money in the way of God, and they were supporting the messenger. And of course, Prophet Muhammad was also an Arab. So when the messenger of the covenant says that there won't be Arab believers, it's meant for the time after him, like in his time and after him, after the miracle came. It was, if I'm not mistaken, one of his duties to give these information to us. And nowadays, if you tell someone, listen, if someone is an Arab and they just live after their 40s, we can clearly say that they are not going to be believers. Like, it's going to be very difficult for people who gonna believe this. They're gonna say, "Oh, but where do you get that information from?" But it is information given to us from the messenger of the covenant, and it is like the truth, right? And it's also a way of seeing that this is truth. Like, then we need to look and see if there are any Arab submitters. And if there are, probably they are doing it because they are hypocrites. Even if they say we believe, we can clearly say they are not believers because this information came to us that they are not going to believe. As for the early vanguards who immigrated, Muhajirin, and the supporters who gave them refuge, Ansar, and those who followed them in righteousness, God is pleased with them, and they are pleased with him. He has prepared for them gardens with flowing streams wherein they abide forever. This is the greatest triumph. So this is one of the verses that a lot of Sunnis use to, they have made up a lot of stories about the companions of the Prophet, right? There are a lot of stories about a lot of companions with their names and a lot of details about all these things. And then they use this verse as to show, yeah, but you don't want to follow the companions. How so? There is a verse in the Quran where God says He's pleased with them. So how can you not follow them? The problem here is that they make up a story, and then they say that the stories and the people that they are talking about, those are the ones God meant here in this verse. But it's not logical. It's a wrong logic. You can't make things up and then say that that this verse is meant for those people. You need to prove that. And we know from the Quran that I most of the times I ask them about, are there any names in the Quran mentioned that God tells like about Abu Bakr or Umar or Osman or like Ali, those names are not in the Quran. So if it was important for us to know their names, like for example, we know one of them. It's the one who was going to divorce his wife, and you know the story about that. So that name we know because God told us in the Quran. So probably it was not probably like God, it's meant for us to that we know it. And if it wasn't, then God wouldn't have given us the name. And this also helps us not to go to information that is not given by God. Sometimes we have that, right? We are curious, we want to know who that person is and what they told, the things and all things that go on there. But we need to stop at a point, and we need to say, okay, this information is not given by God, so it's not really important. So we don't have to go and search for it or look into history books or the other things. Of course, you can like talk about history, and we could say, okay, probably these were the people, because the Messenger of the Covenant does that when he talks about, for example, the when the Quran was finished, and Prophet Muhammad left some notes behind how to make it a book, and then he tells what happens, right? So and these things are history. He gives the names, but those names we don't see in the Quran. Retribution doubled for the hypocrites. Oh, is it finished, by the way? Sorry. I think it's finished. Chapter verse 100. Yeah, so that would be the last one. I have actually 9 minutes left, but I have read 2 pages of the Quran. So I think I should stop here, and if there are any questions or things that you want to say, please. MashaAllah. Yeah, so actually I prepared for some other verses, but then, I saw something I prepared for the other verses and not these. So that's why maybe it's a little bit short today.
MashaAllah, brother. Thank you. God bless.
MashaAllah.
Yeah, mashallah, that's great. I mean, it doesn't have to be 40 minutes. It can be 30 minutes too. 40 minutes is like the maximum.
So it's not at least 40 minutes, right?
No,
Maximum, yeah, I know.
MashaAllah, brother.
So I had a question about the first verse actually. We have verse 75, and the title in this chapter is "You shall be stern with the disbelievers." So does that mean that there is this moment when we have discussions with the disbelievers and we're talking about them and giving them information about the message of the covenant and all these things, and there are always some moments when they just are so extremely unrespectful, towards the things that they are saying. They say things about the messenger of the covenant. They say he's a liar and he's a bad person, that kind of stuff. Well, at that moment, what is actually the best thing to do? Because sometimes I'm trying to stay relaxed, and not to go into that. And I know there is a verse in the Quran that he says, if they, ridicule your religion, then leave them, and when they are, normal again, go back to them preaching the message. But it's sometimes very difficult to make that decision. Should we wait a little bit more, or give them time to think about it, or because it's very difficult to speak with people who are ridiculing your religion at the moment and saying bad things about the messenger.
Right. I think that God says that when we talk to the people of the scripture, we should debate with them in the best possible manner unless they transgress, right? So, obviously, I mean, when someone says things like that, I mean, it can be difficult to, contain our emotions. But the thing is that in reality, when you first are giving the message to anybody, you know, there there might be some people that will initially respond in this manner, and it can happen, and I think people need to be mindful of that, and people need to also kind of make a judgment call at that point in terms of whether this person really wants to understand and like he's genuinely stuck, or if this person is just and if this person is really trying to get to the truth, or if this person is just trying to attack the message, right, and the messenger, and so, and then so because a lot of times people try to get to the message. Obviously Satan is trying to divert them, right? And so if we respond in a negative manner in those situations, we will end up repelling those people, right? And then repelling someone is a big sin. Ends up hurting us, right? Right. So we have to be careful about that. But at the same time, uh, it's not an obligation for any one of us to convince anyone, right? So so at the very least, I mean, if you can't respond in the best way, or if you are not sure, you don't have to continue the conversation. You can just offer peace to people, and but obviously after addressing their concern, I mean, you can just offer peace to them. But the verses about being stern and harsh are talking about people that you don't have any hope for at that point. Obviously, up until you have hope, you're supposed to treat them in the best way. But once you realize that these people are destined for hell and there's no hope for them, then you're not supposed to have cordial relationship and with them, and extend love and friendship to these people. So that's what the verse is basically referring to here.
MashaAllah. And I had also one question about 82. God says there, let them laugh a little and cry a lot. This is the requital for the sins they have earned. What does God mean by that, let them laugh a little and cry a lot? Does it mean that they are not going to be happy, like they're most of the times they are going to be unhappy and they are going to.
No, I mean it's a figure of speech, because it's saying let them laugh a little and cry a lot. Like let them laugh now, but they're gonna cry a lot, basically. Because of what's coming ahead for them as a consequence.
And we see here in 83, God says, if God returns you to a situation where they ask your permission to mobilize with you, you shall say, you will never again mobilize with me, nor will you ever fight with me against any enemy, for you have chosen to be with the Sendatory in the first place. So if there is a war and a fight, and they don't come to the first war, for example, does this mean that for the next fight we need to say the same to these people? Like, you didn't come to the first one, you made excuses, so um, so you can't come with us in the second war. Is that what we should understand from this?
Yeah, so the way, yeah, it's kind of like that. I think these are the people that didn't fight with them before. So it's like, okay, well, you didn't fight before, so now that I understand is probably they saw that previously they didn't fight with them, maybe because they didn't have any hope that these people are going to win. Obviously, these people are not believers, so they were exposed as hypocrites. Uh, they're kind of sedentary, described as sedentary, right? But they didn't fight at that time. Now that the believers won the first war, now they understand that, okay, these people have won. Now these people are stronger. More people have joined them. Now there's another war coming up, and they have calculated that they might win the war, and then these people are have their eyes on the spoils, or something like that, for some kind of worldly benefit, and now they want to join, you know. So now they're saying that they want to participate. So that's probably my understanding on these verses.
Yeah, and can we also say that, there is no way for them to have regrets, because in the other verses we see that they are swearing by God, they are saying things, but then still they shouldn't be pardoned. So this means that for those people they can't even really regret, or God doesn't let them regret it. And by that I mean, if you don't
Sorry,
follow,
go ahead.
so if you don't go to the first war, that means like you are exposed as a hypocrite. And can we also say that the doors for regretting are closed for you? Is that something which we can say or not?
Well, so when they're saying that they swear by God too that you should pardon them, they're just offering lip service, like so that they don't want to spoil their relationship with them. But at the same time, they're not actually repenting to God or anything. They're not. They are apologizing to the person, but they're not apologetic inside. You know. So they're just saying it to please Him and to pacify the believers. That, yeah, yeah, please, I'm sorry I couldn't go. I had this and I had that. Just the same way they were making excuses. Like they're saying, oh, our homes are vulnerable and this and that. And when they came, oh, I'm so sorry I couldn't go. I swear if I could, I would. But like I had this thing and this thing and I couldn't go. So they're just making up excuses, same way they were making excuses before. It's just this time they're saying the same thing, but afterwards.
Yeah, we know that, of course, because it's mentioned in the Quran, and God gives all these verses to Muhammad, right? He informs them about it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but let's say the same situation happens in our time, or in a time when the submitters need to fight, and they need to go to war. Like, can we, or can they then at that moment think the same way, and then use these verses as you didn't came to the first, so it happened before, so, and this is the way how we need to treat you guys. We are not going to trust you, because we don't have like, at the time they had new verses coming, right? So things happened, and then new verses came, so they knew exactly what to do and how to handle. Does that mean that if something similar happens in the future, that the submitters can make these decisions based on the verses that we read here in the Quran, because it's an example for us?
So if you're in a situation where something needs to be done, and since sincerely, if you see that if people were sincere, they would participate and help you in that matter, right? Let's say, and you realize that they don't, and they're exposed somehow, let's assume, to you as hypocrites, right? Now then there's another opportunity to do something and you realize that these people are not sincere, they're just in for some kind of worldly benefit, right? And at that point, obviously, you wouldn't want them to participate, right? I mean, you want to be with the believers, people who are sincere, um, you know, and obviously people who will not cause issues, problems, divisions, things like that, right?
Yeah. Also,
So,
also
so yeah, huh?
when the war is also happening, it's like
Yeah,
very dangerous to trust them and to to stand with
yeah,
your backs towards
yeah,
them.
and exactly, like, and think about like spying and all those things. Also, like spying for the enemy, or being an informant and things like that. There could be so many issues, trust-related issues too, right? So, I mean, I think that would be natural.
Sorry to interject. I do believe there's a following verse in the Quran where it says, if you were to invite those sedentary or hypocritical people in part of the war, they would create dissent in the ranks and division. So, like, it gives you the answer as to what would happen should you invite these people who had the chance to fight for the community, fight for the believers, and you gave them another chance, right? God gives that example. Thank you. I didn't have it in front of me, so I appreciate you pointing that out.
Yeah, but there, of course, God knows it, and they are getting the messages. God informs them at that moment when it's going to happen, or because God knows the future, of course, He tells them not to mobilize. So God protects them, of course. Yeah, mashallah.
And to answer your other question, was this only an answer for the past? I think any student of history, which is many of us here, considering we all thoroughly study a historical book, a scripture that has passed the test of time, God's truth is eternal, right? And humanity does not change. How we think about things, sure, technology and our conveniences change, but people still act the same way, right? So God has set a precedent. I think it's important to follow that till the end of our days, right?
Yeah, I think, then the thing about the first war and the second war, I think it's important to know that the first war is when they were really fewer in number, and they were really it was really difficult, and the hypocrites calculated that, yeah, these people are just stupid, they're going to lose, and nobody would want to be a part of that, right? Now the second time, after now they're victorious, they have gained a lot of people and a lot of spoils, and so then the other hypocrites, I mean, they're greedy, so they're obviously, since they're not sincere in the first place, it's natural to know that they're only doing it for worldly benefits. Obviously, he wouldn't want, the prophet wouldn't want people like that to participate with them for what. So, yeah.
Yeah, and of course, these are moments to expose these people. That's
Mm-hmm.
also very important. Like
Yeah, that's
you,
like God
yeah,
says, the verse, hard times serve to expose the hypocrites, right?
yeah. So you are actually not really strong, and then you have a fight. You go and fight with these people, and then you become strong. And meanwhile, God has a system where the people. So it's like double help, and he makes sure you win the war, and the hypocrites are exposed.
Mm-hmm.
So difficult times are needed for the believers. It's also
Mm-hmm.
needed for them. So then,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the rotten ones can be exposed. I wonder what. what is the thing to do next, right? Is it like they come back and they tell them that they don't trust them, and of course this also means they are not going to do any um, they won't have any relations with them, right? Business wise, maybe don't do business with them, buy or sell things to them. Can we understand it like that, or can they just stay in the same community but they are exposed, or are they going to leave the society? Because they are exposed, or shall the believers do they have to um, uh, be in a certain way, towards them, that they are actually forced to leave the society.
Uh,
Doesn't the Quran give a precedent for that? Like, it's more of an exposure, and you're not supposed to exile them, but at the same point, like, they're exposed as hypocrites, and you're not even supposed to be at their funeral, from my understanding. Am I incorrect on that?
So, I would imagine if I go to a war and some people around me before the war and they are exposed, I am not going to trust them anymore. I don't want to be friends with them anymore. And God definitely says you need to run away from the hypocrites. And then, so basically, they are going to be isolated automatically, right? And when you have these people who are isolated, how are they going to live like aside you? So does this mean that like it's a natural way of isolating them because of the commandments? Because you're going to follow what God says, right? You're not going to befriend them. You're not going to trust them anymore.
right. So here we say isolating. You know, I know. That should probably say
Isolating.
differently.
Ah,
Yeah. Um,
okay,
yeah. So I was
isolating.
gonna say. So if you look at the verse 994, right, which says, "Heart and serve to expose the hypocrites." It says, "They apologize to you when you return to them from the battle. Say, do not apologize. We no longer trust you. God has informed us about you. God will see your works, and so will the messenger. Then you will be returned to the knower of all secrets and declarations. Then he will inform you of everything you had done." So it kind of seems like, yes, they're exposed, um, uh, but and they're exposed as wicked people, but at the same time, they're being told, that, okay, God will see your works, and so will his messenger. It sounds like, okay, we'll see, like how you continue now, you know. So it's not. It's like, yeah, they were exposed, but at the same time, they're kind of there's kind of this possibility that maybe these people might turn around and fix their act from these verses, like when it says, "God will see your works, and so will the messenger." So it's not like completely like if someone wants to say, "No, no, like I'm with you, brother, and like let me participate or let me do this," and you don't let them participate. But if they're still trying or trying to show that they're trying to be believers, I mean, you just let them. I mean, you can't say, no, you're not a believer, and um, just completely like shun them in that way, right? But if they're trying to say, no, I will change or this or that, you can say, oh, I mean, that's what I see from these verses. But obviously, ultimately, God will make the judgment on that in that case, But you're just letting it situation be like, um, you know, versus somebody who clearly says, no, I no longer believe. I mean, then yeah, or this religion is wrong. At that time, obviously, you can not have relations with them completely. But I mean, these people are exposed as hypocrites, so you still won't have relations with them in that sense. But I think you still kind of leave some kind of a way for them just to see their works, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, but these people have also families, right? They have children, their wives. Like it's going to affect them as well, right? If like if you don't do business with them, they're going to be more poor, and then like it's a strange situation, of course.
There is a precedent in the Quran that says this is not a religion of compulsion. And then it also gives precedence of other people who act against um, the teachings of the Quran. So adulterers, thieves, right? And exile is never the punishment. It is essentially an isolation to show that what they've done and expose it to the community, right? So and even the messenger, Dr. Rashad Khalifa, he said like a perfect community is one that has ultimate freedom of choice, like hyper capitalism, right? And like I'm not saying it verbatim, but from my understanding, that was what was said. So like I don't think exile is the punishment. I think the fact that the community itself is aware of their hypocrisy, um, and that bias and that isolation is punishment enough. And if they redeem themselves through asking God for forgiveness, that's their choice. And if they seek another community, that's their choice as well. I could be wrong. God willing, I'm not saying anything false.
Yeah, so there is this verse in the Quran where God says you need to run away from them, and God says these are the worst people, the hypocrites. We don't trust them. You know, it's like there are a lot of things God has said about these people. So I like, and then you have these moments of war, like very important things going on, and these people made again the wrong decision, of course. And after that. Like how are you going to trust them again? You know what is that they can do? I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, you're not going to trust them again. They're saying that they no longer trust you. So,
But you don't exile them, and then you wait for them, you look at their behaviors. Is Does that, for
no, you
example,
don't
mean that?
exile anybody. I mean, you're just keeping yourself distant from them, right? I mean, exile is a very strong word in terms of, like, you mean disown them?
Hmm.
You mean disown them? You will
Like,
disown.
yeah, like I mean, in a society where you have these people who stabbed you
Exile
in the
just means
back.
you're throwing them out of the place.
Yeah, that they go to another place, for example, that they don't live in the same society anymore.
It doesn't say anywhere that you exile them.
No, no, I don't say that you need we need to exile them. That's not what I'm saying. No, I like I'm trying to imagine a situation where you have like this the society of the believers, and you have these people who have done these things, right? And these are people with wives and children, and it's a society. So yeah, and it's of course very difficult to trust them again if we say God, because the verse says, right, God and the messenger are going to look how they behave. So that means that they are given a chance maybe to regret.
Or to be an example, right? Like an example to the community of what happens should you not hold true, right? Like that
Mm,
could
right.
be a bigger reason, right?
Yeah,
Like
I
you
think.
see like smaller towns and smaller communities, when they see a thief, like everybody knows that guy's a thief. The children are taught that person's a thief. Don't be around that person. That
Mhm.
can be a warning in itself,
Mm,
right?
Yeah,
That can be
exactly. I
very
mean, the thing
powerful.
is, yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, the thing is that, like when we talk about a society of believers, the society of believers, let's say a city you live in, right? And there's many believers there. There's going to be many disbelievers there too. There's going to be many hypocrites there too. I mean, around in that area, right? So you can't say, this area just belongs to the believers, and anybody who's a disbeliever hypocrite has to go and live somewhere else. So they're going to be in the vicinity. I mean, people will encounter them, but they just distance themselves from them. They don't have, the believers. I mean, the real believers will not have, you know, friendships with them and stuff like that. That's the only difference. But as far as like exiling them or setting an example for them or things like that, I mean, that's not what the verses I see